Hello, Kathy Vic, Deeply Awake. We have been asked to give a little story. And there are times when nothing else will do. Consider it what Grandma does when no other thing sounds good, not even a cookie. But laying down and being told a story helps sometimes. She knows that we are very close and evident when we tell a story because she doesn't know any off the top of her head, really. Not really. Okay, maybe a couple, but you will recognize them, viewer. And so it requires that she go away. Truth be told, that would be a lovely thing today. There was a little girl who lived on a farm. She once had a conversation with a spider and learned many things from her friend. She would visit the little alcove where she encountered this spider and all the thoughts which seemed so glittery that afternoon. In times when she wished to seek counsel from a friend. Yes, there were goats, and yes, there were horses, and yes, even sheep. But it was this spider who was somehow a mysterious visitor, almost, in that quiet, church-like barn. She went to the alcove, and the spider was not there, though the web was. Somehow, she knew the web was dead. She could tell. She peeked around, and there was no black spider. Through the years, sometimes she would come home to visit on the farm, and she would take a moment out and go to the barn and peek to see, knowing full well no such spider existed in the here and now. At times, she was surprised with a web that looked similar, and one time she saw a brown fuzzy spider just hanging there, munching. But no. This Christmas, though the snow was light, it was cold and the moon was full, blue on the snow. As her feet crunched into that little barn. She looked around and saw the implements hanging. She saw the old retired tractor, and she turned to the alcove where she once met a friend. She walked over to the window next to this little alcove and saw the farmhouse with its smoke. The moon so large tonight. It didn't seem quite real right now. The roof blue and sparkling. The coffee she had in her hand she put down as a wave of nostalgia hit her hard. The first Christmas without mother. Father now unable to speak and needing to be fed. 2 children in college. A visit home. Less important now than staying home with their own family. Something like cry was in her throat as she swallowed, and tears fell down her cheeks. It's not that it was bad here now, and it's not that it was entirely good back then. It's just that the moon is full. And she wished with all her heart, looking at it now through smeared window panes, she wished somehow it could just be different. It was then she noticed a lone scrub bush near the house, tangled nearly, but large enough to have its own space, a smaller one nearby. She wondered what its purpose was. Too far away from the house to give shade or fragrance, too far away from the orchard to give fruit. The body wiry, tangled, bent in and through itself, but somehow beautiful in this moonlight. Its ball of confusion in shadow on the snow. She left the barn, and on her way back to the farmhouse, she stopped by this little bush, taller than she had expected, with thorns. It was brittle, but she knew if she tried, it was she who would be hurt from any attempts to break it. She looked at its dark brown color, its thorns like cat's nails peeking out from the twisted branches. She wondered what purpose this particular bush could serve, besides reminding her that everything hurts more than you'd like it to. She walked up the stairs and entered a warm house that smelled like gingerbread and turkey. The last feasting time done 2 hours ago. The house now quiet, with studious types, reading, watching movies, writing to friends back home. She did not come alone to this place, and she would not be leaving alone. But in this moment, as she wiped off her boots and slipped her bare feet from out of them, she stepped onto cold linoleum and shook her head. How is it I can be surrounded by people and feel so alone tonight? How is it that I can miss a spider as much as this? Why am I missing me at that age when I was not even listened to, and now here I am, here I am, here I am. The socialization was thankfully light that night, and she was able to tuck into her bed by herself. Still and alone, she turned and looked up at the moon through the narrow window, beaming moonlight onto her bedspread. She wondered, looking up at it, just how she got here and what came next. Feeling no need to do anything, but knowing deep, deep down, everything was changing, and she needed to be ready. She moved her head and looked at the moon and said, "Ready for what?" The moon, long silent to her, spoke not. And the evening's chill settled on her skin as she snuggled beneath a blanket and went to sleep. You must know she was in her nightgown next. Bathed blue, baby blue, her white night dress billowing from her little body. As she looked at the thorn bush, she heard crunching, but didn't want to look up. She knew someone was approaching her and the bush and had something to say. She regarded the thorns and looked inside the tangle, unable to take even one branch from termination to root. So tangled. Her visitor was an old man, someone who she would seek counsel from, simply because his eyes were as blue as the snow in the moon. He had a kindly smile, and he reached down and touched her forearm, saying, "I'm so glad to see you again." She welled up with tears, and like a child, put her arms around him, buried her face in his scratchy sweater, and cried. He held her head, stroked her hair, and uttered not one word. Though, as her body slowed in the spasms it was feeling, he began to hum, quietly, distantly, fluidly. And this filled her with a peace. She pulled away from him and looked in his eyes, knowing she was safe to ask anything now. "Why am I so sad?" she asked. "I don't understand. And in my not understanding, well, it makes me feel sadder still. Oh, please. I don't understand any of this. She flicked at the bush, shook her head, looked down at her feet and noticed that even though they were bare and on snow, they were warm, like in slippers. He touched the bush, and little white blooms began to be expressed from the branches. Close to the knuckles of the talons of this bush, well defended, unwilling to give away its sweetness, ready to draw blood. He chuckled. "This one knows the way of things we say," he said. "I don't know what you mean." She shook her head again, looked up in his eyes, and asked, "Please explain." "This bush is perfect as it is, you know. It does not invite visitors, does it?" In the silence, a lone bird let out a beautiful song. He continued, "We feel your sadness, we feel your incompletion, and we know there are no words to give you this night. But we know we can offer these words, and they will lay like a balm on your skin." She looked down and needed to scratch her arm. So itchy, so dry. "Yes, dear one," he said. "It is not enough at times to tell a person to let things be, to allow them to be, to find beauty in what is. And we say that your difficulty with these simple ideas is what we would love to love into wholeness now." The needs you have, unmet, clearly. They guide you, do they not? She did not know how to respond. The needs you feel you have, do they not drive you? He asked again. The needs I have. The needs I have. Yes, they do. They drive me. Yes, they do, she said. And the things you have, at times they are not satisfactory, yes? Well, yes, of course, she reported smartly. And is there someone who's observing this, and how do they feel? Are you aware of how this feels? Simply that. How does it feel to notice the difference between what you want, what you need, and what you have in your hand, in your life? Tell us, how does that feel to you? She sighed, turned and pointed to the barn. It led me out there. I just couldn't feel happy. I just couldn't feel whole. He smiled and nodded. Yes, we know of this place. It is a place that many things visit and then hold that signature. That of incompletion, an gnawing need. This is a hunger which is difficult to shake. What does this bush make you feel? He asked. Well, I feel aggravated. This bush does not want to share, and I don't like that. If you understood that these blossoms are only eaten by woodland creatures here, and that they are such a delicacy that over time the bush had to develop talons to ward off these opportunists, the ones who are not in balance, what would you say then? She thought about it and said, well, I'm not a predator, and there are plenty of situations here within me that feel like this too. Ah, he said, well, of course. It is not so much the circumstance, dear, and it's not so much the person. What is driving it all is the sense within you that drives you forward, that it simply is not acceptable and not enough. We would suggest it being whatever is in front of you. Perhaps, he nodded to the bush, this flowering shrubbery we offer you today. Your longing is commensurate with your trials, and your trials are beautiful, and they can come to an end, you know, he said. She said, I don't see how. My life is as tangled as this bush. I don't see a way out. I just have to keep doing things. Just keep doing things. Hopefully it'll all make sense someday. Hopefully I'll be in better shape one day. He put his hand on her shoulder, got a little closer, smiled and said, do you not understand? A sense of incompletion is there because you already know completion. A flash of anger, a defense that is not required in your presence. Only tells you there are less defended flowers nearby. When in incompletion in your life, do not make the mistake of projecting this into all the days of your life. What you see behind you, dear one, might have been a girl on a sad day. However, look at you now, standing here in the moonlight, so wise, so deep, so true, so willing to talk to us. So please, quiet. What has been is not what is occurring, dear one, and what has been is not what is to come. This is something so hard to believe, but look you at the shrubbery. Can you not see? It is one tangle, impossible to see, where one ends and another begins. Truly, truly. It's one bush out of acres that we could be looking at. But this one is the one that caught your eye, the defended one, the one that can hurt you. Interesting. We say it's time to come home, dear one. Go upstairs and understand. There is someone inside of you who needs nothing more than you tonight. The one who has been disappointed, the one who feels betrayed, the one who feels left out, uninvited, unimportant. This one, she is calling you through the tangle, calling you through the moonlight, asking you please join me and help me and tell me I'm not all alone. You were there for every single battering. You were there for every single disappointment. You, dear one, you. Now you look back and you feel this one crying out, hey, it's gonna go on forever, isn't it? Talk to her, love her, and counsel her as we have counseled you. With that, the woman woke up in her bed. She tried to shake her head and clear her head, and it didn't happen. She found her water, took a sip, and went back to bed. Sleep enveloped her immediately, and it was black and dreamless. In the morning, downstairs, through the bay window, she drank her coffee looking at the white front lawn. There, overnight, flowers had bloomed on this beautiful white, thorny bush. She couldn't ask her father anymore about the bush or why he'd planted it. And the others around her weren't that interested in this kind of thing. And there were other things to do. So she sipped her coffee and looked and smiled. She had done as they had counseled, though she did it without dream and without conscious intent. But the part of this woman who was grieving so quietly in the snow that night had forgotten that the continuity she was aware of was due to her own consciousness and her own feelings about things that had gone on before. She knew she could not bear again. Rather than remember her strength and knowledge and creativity, rather than believe She would never have another experience quite like that again. She let the feelings and the experience melt inside of her and create a sense of calm. On the day she was leaving the farm to go back home, they pulled out of the driveway and she looked at the white bush, now heavy, with blooms that looked a lot like azaleas. Counterintuitive, they would bloom so hard in the middle of snow. She asked the driver to stop. She bundled up in her big sweater and then ran out to the bush. These beautiful blossoms were now larger than her fist. She plucked one. She looked down. The talons were gone. She looked out the snow and saw so many little talons, so much like kitty toenails, littering the snow below. I wonder why, she muttered to herself, and looked to where the old man had visited her that night in the snow in her dream. Allow the future to be the future. Allow yourself the experience of this moment now. The voice said, as she pocketed the little petals that had fallen from the bloom, placing them in her little tiny pocket. She walked to the car and she handed it to her brother. Here you go. I thought you'd like this. They drove away and she was surprised and wondered about the talons a lot. Why did those things fall off? No answer came. The answer she had given making less and less sense as the miles accumulated between farmhouse and her house. But after that, a sense of gnawing grief no longer visited her. The kind that made her shake and feel weak and feel so alone. She understood. She had not been alone. The old man had shown her that. And somehow just knowing this was quite dizzying, and usually more than enough to steady the sensations of grief. It was a long one. Wow.